This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
I have got some shocking numbers for you in this episode. As West Virginia prepares to play Penn State, and all the pundits out there say West Virginia, or at least many of them, say West Virginia don't stand a chance because the talent gap is just too much. Well, I'm here to tell you I have numbers that show the talent gap may not be as big as you think. And in this episode, which is sponsored in part by BetUS Online Sportsbook and Casino, we're going to talk about it. And we're going to do it right after this word from this other channel sponsor. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up? Welcome in. Come on into Couz's Corner. Make yourself comfortable. Build yourself up to the bar. Let me pour you out this shot of top shelf college football content. For those of you who are new here, I'm your host, Couz, and I am here to let you know that on tap today, we are talking about West Virginia versus Penn State. Boy, I can't wait. I'm so excited. Arguably the biggest home opener at West Virginia since 1998. One of the biggest non-conference home games in recent memory, if not ever, and a really big chance for West Virginia to go out here and shock the world and do the same thing Georgia Tech did this past weekend and pull off an upset against a top 10 team. Can they do it? We will see, but I'm telling you, even though I picked West Virginia to lose this game in the show I did with Jonathan Martin at Golden Blue Breakdown in our season prediction, I picked West Virginia to lose the game. I did. But, man, I'm telling you, after looking at these numbers, these PFF grades that I'm going to show you today, I'm starting to come around and think that maybe West Virginia has a better chance than I even thought. So let's dive right in. For those of you who saw it, I did a video a couple of days ago where I looked at West Virginia's the guys who left West Virginia's team who were on it when they played Penn State a year ago versus the guys who are now going to be playing. And I looked at transfers. I looked at guys who are graduating. I looked at everything. And I looked at their overall PFF grades. Now, and West Virginia is making a huge improvement when you look at the guys they're bringing in, at least on paper. So my argument was this is not the same West Virginia team Penn State played a year ago. They're going to be much more talented. Well, someone in the comments made the point, Couz, but what about Penn State? Are they going to be more talented? Well, I decided to do the same thing for Penn State. And then what I did, I took it a step further and compared the two teams. I'm looking at the projected starters for each team, offense and defense, and their PFF grades from 2023 and put them side by side. And I think you're going to be very shocked by what you see. So let's dive right into the show here. Let's go ahead and pull up these numbers here. And the first ones I'm going to show you are the Penn State numbers. This is the Penn State team. I don't know every Penn State starter from a year ago, okay? So I'm basing this on snap counts and on what Phil Steele is projecting the start, who Phil Steele is projecting the starters to be for 2024. So Penn State fans, this may not be exactly accurate, but it should be close, okay? All right. Keandre Lambert, let's start off with the wide receiver position. Keandre Lambert-Smith left the program, transferred out. He's now at Auburn. Had a 73.7 grade at the receiver spot. They lost backup wide receiver Dante Cephas, who's now at Kansas State. Didn't play a ton of snaps against West Virginia, but he did play well, and he had a 62.2 grade a year ago. They went out and got Julian Fleming from Ohio State in the portal. He has a 61.2 grade coming in, and he will likely be their number one go-to receiver. At least I think that's what Phil Steele thinks anyway. And then you've got Kalen Saunders, who's likely to be their starting slot receiver on the team, one of their leading returners from a year ago. I've got him penciled in as a starter there as well, kind of an even replacement for Cephas. And I think he has a 65.1 grade from a year ago. So Keandre Lambert-Smith had a much higher PFF grade, but Julian Fleming is extremely talented. We know how many good receivers Ohio State has on a year-in, year-out basis. They put guys into the NFL like clockwork. So Julian Fleming is going to be very talented. But this is one of the question marks. If there's a question mark on Penn State's team, this is one of the positions where there is one, and that's wide receiver. But anyway, there's your returning production versus your leaving production. Now, tight end, they did lose backup tight end, or I don't even know if you call him a backup. He went to the NFL, but Penn State loved to use tight ends, and I'm sure they will continue to do that under Andy Kotelnicki because he did the same at Kansas. But they lost tight end Theo Johnson to the NFL, one of 6 NFL draft picks on this list, by the way. Actually, 7. Anyway, they lost him to the NFL. He had a 60.5 PFF grade a year ago. His likely replacement is Khalil Dinkins, who was on the roster a year ago and had a 63.2 PFF grade. So as you see, may not see a big drop-off in production if you look strictly at the PFF grades. Now, again, I know PFF's not the end-all be-all, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but to me, it's a good, fair way to evaluate these guys if you want to put numbers on it. To me, it's just as good as any other system out there. So let's go now to the defensive side of the ball and look at defensive end. 2 very high draft picks that Penn State lost from a year ago, Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac. Look at these 2 PFF grades, 90.8 and 81.8 respectively. In order to fill that gap, one of the things Penn State did, they took star linebacker Abdul Carter, who had a 70.4 PFF grade playing middle linebacker a year ago, and are moving him to defensive end because of his pass rushing ability. He had a 70.4 grade at linebacker. Can he do better, even better than that at defensive end, or will he drop off? It'll be interesting to see. But he's a very, very good football player, All-American candidate, preseason All-American, I think, All Big Ten guy, very talented, stud. Abdul Carter's a stud, a future NFL player. The other defensive end spot will likely be taken up by Danny Dennis Sutton, who got a lot of snaps in 2023 and had a really solid PFF grade of 75.7. So will Penn State have much of a drop-off at DN? Man, I'm telling you, Robinson and Isaac are guys that are hard to replace, but they're replacing them with 2 other really good players in Carter and Dennis Sutton. Now, let's go to stay on the defensive side and go to the cornerback position. They're losing Johnny Dixon and Kalen King. Johnny Dixon graduated, had a 66 PFF grade. Doesn't set the world on fire, but it's not terrible either. Kalen King, another NFL guy, had a 60.3 PFF grade. The guys who they're replacing them with are 2 transfers. One from Florida named Jalen Kimber, who had a 69.3 grade at Florida a year ago, and A.J. Harris, who they went and got from Georgia, a 66.2 PFF grade from a year ago. So this is the one position where they're going to be relying heavily on transfers. Can Kimber and Harris perform well at Penn State like they did at their previous 2 stops, or can they perform even better? Phil Steele thinks they can, and he is projecting this to be one of the top secondaries in the country. Now, let's go to the linebacker spot. I have Abdul Carter on here again because, yes, he's leaving a spot open, a gap to fill at the linebacker spot because he's moving to defensive end, so his spot needs to be filled. They're also losing Curtis Jacobs to graduation. They had 70.4 and 64 grades a year ago, respectively. But look at the guys who are replacing them, Tony Rojas and Dom DeLuca, or at least who are projected to replace them. Tony Rojas and Dom DeLuca. Look at their PFF grades, 83.2 and 90.7. And that they played a lot of snaps. Again, played a lot of snaps in 2023 and had really high PFF grades. So they may not take a step back at this position. Phil Steele doesn't think they will. He thinks, again, Penn State's going to have a really solid linebacker core again in 2024. And based on the PFF grades, he's not wrong. Now let's go back to the offense, and this time look at the guys up front, the offensive linemen. Very similar story here to West Virginia. West Virginia's losing 2 offensive linemen from a year ago, 2 starters. They're replacing them with guys who have a ton of experience, but may not be quite as talented. I think Penn State's doing something similar here, at least when you look at the numbers. Hunter Norzad left Penn State, went to the NFL. He had a 72.9 grade. His likely replacement, Nick Dawkins, 72.2 PFF grade a year ago. So on paper, there shouldn't be much of a drop-off from Norzad to Dawkins. Left tackle spot. Now, this is the one where West Virginia could potentially exploit Penn State, maybe. They lose star left tackle and first-round draft pick Olu Fashanu, who had a 78.8 grade a year ago. His likely replacement at left tackle, Drew Shelton, who had a 65 PFF grade. Still not terrible, but replacing a first-round draft pick is not going to be easy, just like West Virginia has to replace a second-round draft pick in Zach Frazier at center. Will there be a step back there at that spot for Penn State, and can the West Virginia D-line exploit that? The other offensive line position and another NFL player, Caden Wallace, played right tackle a year ago for the Nittany Lions. He had a 68.7 grade. His likely replacement is Anthony Donkey, and his name is not Donkey like the animal. Spell check got me here. I apologize for the misspelling of his name. I think it's actually Donke, but nonetheless, Anthony Donkey is going to be the likely replacement for Wallace, and he had a 62.5 grade a year ago. So will this Penn State line take a step back? We will see. I think they will. Now, when you look at the bottom of your screen there, bottom left, you'll see that Penn State's losing an average PFF grade of 70.8. They're not rebuilding. They're just reloading. 70.4 returning. So Penn State, by all intents and purposes, should not really miss a beat when you look at their talent across the board. They should just keep going and be just as good, if not better, than a year ago. Because when you add this talent with that experience and returning production, because, again, they didn't have to get a lot of guys from the portal. They're replacing with guys that were already on the roster and, in most cases, played quite a few snaps in 2023. Now, let's compare. Actually, before we compare the two rosters, the two starting rosters, let's talk about how the line on this game has moved. And I think a lot of it, heck, a lot of you who watch this video may agree with a lot of other people who are now putting money on West Virginia. This game was at a 10.5-point spread. It has now come back to 8.5. Let's go ahead and look at the BetUS site to take a look at it. Right there it is, Penn State, West Virginia. Now, when it came back from 10.5 to 8.5, I was kind of reluctant. I was thinking, man, I'm not sure I want to bet this game now. And I'm not sure I want to I'm not going to bet against West Virginia. And I'm not sure I'm confident enough to put money on them, but I take a look at these PFF numbers and I think, you know what? The talent gap isn't what I thought it was. I think West Virginia has a legitimate chance to win this game. I don't think their talent's going to take a back seat to Penn State's talent, at least when you look at the starters. So barring major injuries and barring having to get into their 3 deep or deep into their 2 deep in this game, I think West Virginia can play snap for snap with Penn State. So because of that, and I'm taking the points here. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is here. I'm dropping $25 that West Virginia wins the game with a chance to win $22.73. Going to place the bet. Confirm. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. If you want to do the same thing, check out the BetUS link in my description box. Take advantage of the offer right now BetUS has. You get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Take advantage of that offer today if you do. And if you choose to do so, please make sure to play responsibly. Don't bet more than you can afford to bet, okay? Be responsible with it. And don't forget, you must be 18 years of age or older, which I'm confident most of you probably are. Now, let's go ahead and compare the two rosters side by side here. This is really what got me intrigued when I looked at these two rosters side by side. First, let's look at the quarterback position. I've got them based. I got offense side by side by position, defense side by position, so you can get a fair and easy view of it here. I'll scroll up as I need to so you can see the whole screen. But when you look at quarterback, I mean, I'm not going to go through every single position because we'd be here all day. But when you look at the offense, obviously West Virginia led by Garrett Green, who had a 90.7 grade a year ago, Drew Aller at Penn State, and 87.9 at quarterback. So 2 really good quarterbacks who had good seasons last year. Both took care of the football well. Green's score is likely a little higher because of his running ability. But 2 very capable quarterbacks going into this game. A lot of similarities at the receiver spot. Both teams going to rely on at least one transfer, along with some returning guys. The running back spot. Now here it got a little tricky. Obviously Jaheim White. Jaheim White. He could be an X factor here. He did not play in the game against Penn State a year ago. He had an 89 PFF grade last year. He come on strong in the second half of the season. Ended up being West Virginia's leading rusher with over 800 yards on the ground. Averaged about 7.7 yards per carry. One of the premier backs in the Big 12 as a true freshman. He didn't play in the Penn State game because he just wasn't ready yet. So that's something that Penn State's going to have to prepare for. Now, they also have C.J. Donaldson back. Now, I didn't put him in here because they'll have him listed on the depth chart as an or, C.J. Donaldson or Jaheim White. I just threw White in here because I'm going to assume he's starting the game. But you could really go either way because Donaldson's PFF grade was pretty good too. On the other side of the field, you've got Nick Singleton and Katron Allen at Penn State. They have their own two-headed monster at running back. Now, I went with Phil Steele here and penciled Nick Singleton in as a starter, and he had the lowest PFF grade of the two at 69.7. So, in all fairness, Penn State's overall grade would be bumped up a little bit had I put Katron Allen in that slot. But again, I just went by what Phil Steele's projecting. Offensive line, I feel like West Virginia, pretty similar. Both of them are replacing productive guys with guys who were backups a year ago. So we'll see. Now, Wyatt Milam is probably the one number that sticks out here. He had a 79.5 grade a year ago at West Virginia. Arguably one, or not, it's not even arguable. He's one of the best tackles in college football. Hasn't allowed a sack in 2 years. The matchup between him and Abdul Carter is going to be extremely interesting, assuming Abdul Carter plays his side of the field. That's a matchup to watch. Will Abdul Carter finally get a sack against Wyatt Milam? We'll see. When you look at, but just look at offensive average, West Virginia's offensive PFF grade from a year ago was 70.2, so not bad. Penn State's 66.94. Again, had I had Katron Allen instead of Nick Singleton in, it would have been probably closer to 70. But as you can see, either way, pretty tight when you look, pretty close gap there when you look at the grades. Now let's look at the defense. West Virginia's highest defensive grade, Jaheim Joseph, transfer from Northwestern at safety, 80.7. And Aiden Garnes is even higher than him, the transfer from Duquesne, 87.4 returning. Now, those two guys are both transfers. Also transferring in Garnet Hollis Jr., the corner from Northwestern, who will likely start. He has a 73 PFF grade. You've got Aubrey Burks at a 79.4. For Torma Mulba, the returning nose tackle, who's going to be replacing Mike Lockhart at that nose tackle spot, 76.4. So some pretty good grades there. West Virginia's average defensive grade from a year ago, 72.8. Penn State, when you look at their projected starters, their average is 74.76. So West Virginia had a slight advantage offensively. Penn State's got the slight advantage defensively. Their highest graded guys, you've got Kevin Winston, a projected safety at 87. You have Kobe King, a linebacker at 82.5, and Tony Rojas, another linebacker, at 83.2. So, and then you have a lot of guys there in the 70s and just a couple in the high 60s. So, long story short here, not a big talent gap. And to hammer that point home, what I did is I took the two and I put their totals side by side on its own spreadsheet just so we can get a better view of it. And here that is. As you can see, Penn State lost an average of 70.8 from a year ago from guys who either started or played a lot of snaps against West Virginia. They gained 70.4 PFF, an average of 70.4 on PFF grades. Their projected starters for this game, 70.85. So their talent has stayed pretty consistent. What's that tell you? Penn State has a solid program. They just reload every year. That's what it tells me. West Virginia, what their numbers tell me is they did a really good job evaluating talent in the portal, at least on paper. When you look at their numbers, they lost an average of 61.5 PFF grade. So the guys they lost, according to PFF, didn't perform real well a year ago on average. The guys they're bringing in, on the other hand, an average PFF grade of 72.7. Now, this is looking at guys who were already on the roster and will be replacing guys and also transfer portal guys. So the starters they lost, or the guys that played a lot of snaps that they lost, much lower PFF grade than the guys they're bringing in. And then their projected starters, their average offense and defense, 71.5. So a 71.85 average PFF grade for Penn State, a 71.5 average PFF grade for West Virginia. Looking at their starters, projected starters, what's that tell me? You've got, at least on paper now, according to PFF, you have two evenly matched football teams in this game. So why should I expect West Virginia to get blown out if they have just as much talent on their roster as what Penn State's got? Again, it's all on paper, and it's only according to PFF, but I thought those numbers really were intriguing, and I felt like you guys would appreciate it to see it as well. I'm excited. It's given me a lot more confidence going into this game that I think West Virginia, not only can they be competitive against Penn State and keep it close, they can flat out win the daggone game. As Bobby Bowden will say, they can win the dadgum game. Dadgummit. Want to give a quick shout out to my channel VIP members of this episode. You got PW Riggs, Roy Harrison, Matthew Sokos, and Bill G. Thanks to the 4 of you for supporting my channel. You've all been longtime supporters of the show here. I appreciate you. If you want to become a VIP member, a paid VIP member, hit the join button below or check out the join button on my channel homepage right beside my profile picture. There are other ways you can support the show in the description box. Also, if you like this video, like it. If you want to see more like it, subscribe to the channel. And also hit that notification bell and make sure your notifications are on your device so that you'll be notified of future uploads and future live streams. A lot of cool things planned for this football season. Going to have some different contributors to the show besides myself. That'll hopefully be able to bring you some diverse content. And boy, am I looking forward to it here in this 2024 college football season. Don't forget to check out my sponsors, Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner. If you need an injury attorney or a medical malpractice attorney in West Virginia or Virginia, they're the guys you need to call. They're the folks you need to call. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner. YourLawyerYourVoice.com. And also BetUS, sportsbook and casino. If you want to place a bet on this game, go to the link in my description box and check it out today. This is where I looked at West Virginia's lost production versus returning production from a year ago. You can look at that spreadsheet with this video. I appreciate you tuning in. Have a top shelf day. And don't forget, all week, to cue Country Roads.